Hey, how's it going? Today I'm going to talk about some real estate stuff. This is the part of my Money Monday, and one of my one of my teachers, my mentors years ago, was a big proponent in ready, fire, aim, and that's what I'm doing now. Instead of doing all the prep work that I do, to give you a little background on myself, I tend to be one of those people that over prepare for things and sometimes over prepare to the point that I never get it done. So now I'm going the other direction. I'm letting the pendulum swing over to the other side. So before I get started, let me tell you what this is about. This is about increasing ways to increase the value of your investment property. What I mean by that is real estate, whether it's a single family home or an apartment house, to increase the income and or increase the value. Those two are very closely related in income property. Now your house, on the other hand, your personal residence, it's a completely different scheme. And that's the problem a lot of people have. Like when I do the Cash Flow 101 games, people don't understand the concept of asset. Robert Kiyosaki talks about asset as something that puts money in your pocket or puts money in your bank, whatever. People think their home is an asset. In many ways it is, but unless you're renting it out, like you move someplace else or you rent out a room to a college student, it's not an asset in that regard. You can still use your home for other things, for building up your credit, for building up equity that you can use. But what we're talking about here is rental properties and things you can do so that, number one, you can increase its value if you're going to sell it, or if you want to take a loan out on it for whatever reason, whether it means you want to take money out of your income property to get your teeth fixed, buy your Lamborghini or whatever it is you want to buy, your Yugo, a car, whatever, send your kids to college. But anyhow, the thing about taking money out in a form of a loan on anything, you have to remember, in most situations, and I don't want to say all because I don't know the laws of every state, of every country, generally, when you take money out as a loan, the money you receive is tax-free, and you can use it for whatever you want. So that's something to think about, is why you would do something like this. Or if you want to sell your rental property to someone else and you want to increase the value. Now, here's the thing. If you have economics or the market in the area, remember, real estate is always location, location, location. In other words, something you would do in Orange County, California, you may not want to do in some city or some county in Illinois. And it depends. It's the environment. It's kind of like, you're thinking about animals in the wild. Will a polar bear do well in Phoenix, Arizona without some assistance? Probably not, because that's not their environment. Same thing with real estate. You want to have your approach to your real estate investments such that it matches the local market. I heard something on the news recently about in certain kind of states, the market's going down because of the increase of regulation, the increase of taxation, things like that. The market is going down not necessarily because of value right now. We haven't quite hit that part of the curve yet, but we have gotten to the point of where people don't want to buy because it's too expensive. And so there's not much movement with buying and selling of real estate. So before I go any farther, I just want to let you know I am not a financial planner. I am not a real estate agent. I was at one point. I had a license. What I'm presenting here are things that I have learned over time, whether by going through trainings, which has been a lot, or from personal experience. So, as I always say, please do your own homework, because times and markets do change, And what I tell you right now may not work in your situation. But I want to give you some ideas on how to increase the value and increase the income from your rental properties. And it's known as expandability. So let me give you an example. Say if you have a single family rental, it's a house, and you want to increase some income. And it may not be a lot, but you want to increase your income monthly. You can, if the market will support it, you can increase the rents on your property, which will increase your income. You can fix it up some, make it look pretty. Instead of having a 40-year-old toilet or 40-year-old bathroom in the place, you can upgrade it so that it doesn't break down all the time. And also people who are renting those kind of properties, they're used to those kind of amenities. You can increase things like, say, in a master bedroom, you can do things like, instead of just having one door into a hallway, you can put in a slider that goes out to a patio area or a pool area. So you can do some renovations and upgrades. That will help. But you always have to look at your numbers, as one of my teachers would say, talking about penciling. In other words, you look at your numbers. Does it make sense to do this with this market? I mean, sometimes you have real estate or property that is so old that it may be quaint for a B&B. People like, wow, look at this clawfoot tub. But for someone who wants to live there and have their daily life there, that may not match anymore. Let's see here. What else can you do? Amenities. What kind of things can you add amenity-wise that may help with the income and or value? Let me back up a little bit. When you increase the income of a rental property, you increase the value. In other words, I'm not going to go into the math of it right now, but if you increase the income, the value of the property is more, because what? It's producing more. Just like if you were selling the farm. If the farm was nothing but dirt and dry and dead dirt, you might as well build buildings there. But if you're selling it as a farm, it's lush and rich, and right now you've got a full crop you're about ready to pull out. It would be easier to sell that to someone else because they can see what it produces. The same thing with real estate. If you're starting to make more money, more income, higher rents, whatever, because it's more attractive, it's more practical to the local economy, the people that you have that are the renting population, you can sell it and or pull equity out of it because it's more profitable. It's you think of rental properties in a way such that not only is it you providing a service to somebody, it's a place to live, but also that it's production and profit. Okay, hopefully that made sense. So things that you can do. High-speed internet access. You can have it built into the property such that people can use that and charge them rent accordingly in such a way that not only are they paying for that internet access, but also there's some profit left over there. That's attractive. We are all into internet. We're into like doing the videos that I'm doing. That requires internet access, whether it's through cell service or through hardwired access to an ISP, an internet service provider. People can get not only for business, they can work from home, which I have done. Trust me, if the internet goes down, that's a bad day. But if you've got really good internet access, people will be willing to pay extra for rent to have that. Same thing with, I remember one place I lived years ago had satellite dishes, believe it or not, on the property. And they were able to get things like a network, major networks from the East Coast. So what did that mean? I got to see Saturday Night Live 3 hours earlier. So I didn't have to stay up late. It was really cool. Long as it worked, it was really cool to get programming that I wanted to watch. I didn't have to stay up for, working. You want to get up, Saturday Night Live, even though it's Saturday night, most people don't work on Sunday, but it was nice to be able to not have to force myself to stay up late to watch it. So cable access for TV. Now we're moving more into where we're doing streaming, so internet access is more important than it used to be. That's one thing you can provide. On-site laundry facilities. Now I love this. Expandability. Okay. Most old apartment complexes didn't have much or any laundry facilities. So what did the tenants have to do? They had to go down to the local laundromat and go bring a bunch of quarters with them and go wash and dry their laundry and sit there and wait, which nowadays people have no patience for that. They'd rather do it closer to home. So if you have a laundry facility, or if you don't have a laundry facility at your apartment complex, you could always take a unit out and turn that into a laundry facility. You can build an extension on to where it has some washers and dryers. And back in the day, which was a benefit, if you had something like that, you made money in currency and cash and coins. Nowadays, it's electronic. The people can use their credit card or their debit card to buy a cycle of laundry for whether it's washing or drying. Another thing you can put in there on the laundry facilities are things to where people can buy this soap. It comes in a little box or a little bottle, dryer sheets, things like that. And you can mark it up to where it's profitable. But it's also attractive to people because people want to do everything close to home or in their home. Now, back in the day, you could also set it up so that, let me back up a little bit, in the individual units, you could have a washer and dryer. And in many places, it's too small for a full-size washer and dryer. But if you were to get something more high-end, where like the master bedroom is larger, they may have king-size beds. And those stackables are big, nice enough to do a few pairs of socks and some underwear and maybe a pair of pants. But if you're going to do bedding, you may need something larger. So in your higher end units, you may have the full size washer and dryer, the front loaders. And like I said, nowadays it's electronic. So it's, each individual washer or dryer becomes like a POS, point of sale, to where they stick in their card and they pay for the service. Back in the day, when they would do that in apartment houses or single family houses, it was a great way to have an excuse to come on the premises so you can see if your tenants are taking care of the property. Because back in the day, they actually used coins, and then you'd go down there with your key and pull out the drawer and empty out all the quarters or whatever to get that. Well, now that it's electronic, it's more secure. You don't have to worry about depending whether you're A, B, or C kind of property. And what I mean by that is, when you get C or below, you're starting to look at areas you may not want to go without an armed guard or being strapped. Anyhow, so that's another way. Not only does it draw a different level of tenant, because they have the facilities in their unit, but also it can be a way to increase income, not only by rent, but also by a service that they pay for. Fitness centers or workout rooms. Now, if you've been around as long as I have, some of those places are a joke. They have the worst equipment. It breaks frequently or breaks soon after it's used the first time. You want to get something of quality, okay? Where you might have a radio there, somewhere to pump in some music, some good ventilation, because when people exercise, they sweat, they stink, they fog up the windows, whatever. You want to make something like that, and that isn't necessarily something that they're going to pay as they go. You can include that to where they could have, say, a fob that they put on their, like a lot of places, a fob they can put on their key ring and it gives them access and they pay for that access. Or you can have it wide open for the whole community, whatever. But people do like to exercise. And if it's close to home, in other words, the apartment complex, they will like that better than joining a club somewhere because that's another stop. And today with the traffic and everything else, closer to home, the better. Outdoor spaces such as patios, playgrounds, or dog parks. Excuse me. Being able to go out and into a backyard. It may not be a large backyard, but at least a space where you can put a barbecue, or if the apartment comes with a barbecue, that'll be more attractive. And that also increases the value of the property because people like to go out, especially when the weather's nice, barbecue or hang out with the kids, or have some area to where the dogs can do their business, play, potty, whatever. That's also an incentive to bring people in. But on the downside, you have to figure out you've got some pets, and pets also have a whole nother issue. We're not going to go on that part. But anyhow, people like to get outside now and then, and having a fenced-in area to where they go outside, can have a meal, barbecue, to have some social time, that's also a benefit. Nowadays, a lot of us are using, I don't know what the generic term is, but anyhow, we have things delivered, whether it's from Walmart or from a department store or Amazon or whatever. We order things. We don't go to the store anymore or to the department store or whatever. We order it and it gets delivered to our house. Well, if you have an area or lockers, like the mail, have it the same place where the mail is if you're in a large complex, something like that, to where the driver delivery person can put it in there securely, so when you get off work you can come home, pick it up. That's also an extra. And you can do that to where if you want one of these lockers and you get a key, you pay a little bit more for that, whatever. So that's amenities. Other things you can do is, for instance, I'm looking at a little list here that I made up before I started this video, so just bear with me. And sorry, I'm not an editing guy, so you're gonna have to deal with some of my problems, my boo-boos. So fee-based things, for instance, and again, what is the market like where your property is? Because some of the things I'll tell you in your area, nobody cares about. In other areas, they really care about. So for instance, parking spaces or garages for rent. Now, I live in Arizona, okay? And in the summertime, it gets frickin' hot here. Trust me, I went out to my car the other day and just wanted to open it, just touched the handle, and I thought for sure I was gonna end up with third-degree burns, or on the inside seats, even though they're white, they're still hot. Steering wheel, whatever. So garages, carports, covered spaces, even if it's not on sides, they don't have any place to store anything, or doesn't protect the cars from the wind, but it keeps the sun off. A lot of people find that valuable and are willing to pay extra every month to have that assigned place for their vehicle. Now, getting into these kind of things, one of the things I want to say is also a double plus is nowadays you can put solar panels on those. I don't know where you live or whatever, but I remember the first time I saw it was in Lake Havasu, Arizona. It was at a grocery store. They had covered parking at a grocery store, and I thought that's kind of bizarre. And then I looked up and I saw conduit coming down from the roof. I thought, is that for fire? And then as I walked towards the store and looked back where I parked, I saw all these solar panels up there. So that's a benefit as well, whether you're selling power back to the grid or got batteries in your complex that can store power, or power for your residents, whatever. But that's a double plus. The more enclosed the parking situation is, the more you can charge. Okay, so if you have individual garages with doors a whole bit, maybe some cabinets in there, you can charge more for that. If your property allows. Now, not all properties you can do that with. I mean, you don't have any space. You just have enough spaces for a car space for each individual unit. But if you're building something new, keep that in mind. Again, what else? Oh, storage. It can be anything from, well, let me back up. Most rentals, in my experience, whether I own one or whether I lived in one, there's not a lot of storage. And we collect things, especially in the United States. We are collectors, whether it's grandma's dishes or whether it's, an off-season clothing or bicycles or other sporting things. People would rather have it close by, okay? I mean, if there's a lot of people and you bought a building, say for instance, and there's very little storage space, they're going to store it somewhere and they're going to pay for it somewhere. Why not pay you or pay your company? And that increases the profit, the income, whatever, the value of the property. Now, like I said before, it could be like a closet. It could be, on the other side of the parking lot, something as small as a closet, just for like a pair of skis, a couple of boxes of off-season clothing, whatever, to all the way up to a full-size storage unit where you got an extra car there or whatever, depending on which part of the market you are working with, okay? Pet fees, pet rent, that's pretty typical. Vending machines. Okay, now this applies to not only rental properties, but also, say for instance, if you have a business of some sort. Even if you have an office space, you're doing something, a medical facility. I remember years ago I went to one medical group in the Seattle area, and I was blown away. Seattle's really known for coffee. Starbucks started up there. They had a little cart where they had some snacky treats and coffee, a little barista there, and they turned it into a full-size cafeteria. It grew to that. The same thing you can do in your own business. Even if it's not real estate, you're doing something and you have employees. Well, it's nice for people to have a place they can get some coffee, have a place where they can get some snacks, some chips, whatever, sodas, whatever. Or even if you have a business to where there's cash involved, you can get one of those little kiosk type things where it's a cash machine. Look into something like that. There's a profit center right there. Okay, I talked about storage units, cleaning and concierge service. I think what that's referring to, this is something I looked up on the web. I think if you have something high enough level, in other words, the demographic you're working with, they're professionals, they would like to have someone come in and clean their unit. If you have a service like that, you can take a cut of that as well. Let's see here, utility bills. Let's see, let me go from my memory of things that I've done in the past here. What else? We did the parking, we did the storage, we did the laundry, having a small space for outdoor activities. Doing rehabs and remodels, making sure that the unit is clean, make sure there's no damage done. If you become what's called a slumlord, you don't fix up the place, your demographic is going to go lower and lower. I remember when I was in college, oh my God, I remember looking for a place to stay before the school year started. And it was a part of the city that wasn't the best part of the city, but I was really trying to save money. And I went to a place, and the guy was giving me a tour, and he says, yeah, this is on the market. It's ready to rent. I kid you not, there were doors missing from the closets, there were holes punched in the wall, the place looked like it hadn't been maintained in 20 years. And he said, yeah, this is great, just move on in, you know? And I'm thinking to myself, even there, as a young person, I knew nothing about business. I thought, are you kidding me? If you don't take care of the property, it won't take care of you. Keep it clean. If you got a place to where you also are responsible, or your company or your whatever, property management company is responsible for the taking care of the grass, taking care of the bushes, whatever, the outside spaces, keeping them clean, whatever. Make sure it is. If you don't, if you try to cut corners, the value of your property is going to go down. You're not going to keep the units filled, you know, and it's a vicious cycle. It's going to go downhill. So make sure it's clean. Make sure it's more modern. You know, listen to the community, the market in your area. You know, if you start finding out the people that live there, say a new company has moved in, or a college has just opened up, what is the changing demographics and the people in your market? They may demand something you do not have. Can you create that? You know, like having, older places don't have microwaves. Today, we just assume that a microwave will be everywhere. Get the microwave in there. Appliances that work, more updated. You put a new refrigerator in a kitchen. Does it make ice? You know, some simple things like that. You're going to pay a little bit more for it, but you got to think about the people that don't care about ice probably don't care about taking care of your unit, things like that. So anyhow, I'm getting off on a negative track here. But the thing is, you want to make it attractive. You know, you want people to come to your property or business, feel comfortable, feel welcome. Know that, you know, when they get up in the morning before they go to work and turn on the shower, the shower head doesn't pop off, you know, that it smells good. And I'm serious. I mean, these, oh man, I can tell you stories. I could spend the whole day talking about places I've seen. You know, if the carpet is old, replace it. If it's dirty, clean it. You know, if the filters in the HVAC system have not been replaced in 10 years, replace them, clean the ducts, and make sure that they work. You know, the air conditioning, heating, depending where you are. Some places don't need much for heat, but they need air conditioning, vice versa. You want to attract people who are willing to reach in their pocket and give you money to spend time at your building. And we know what we all need. We need to have food, so you need a kitchen. You need to have laundry. You need a place for them to put their cars, unless you're in one of those areas to where people, they don't have cars. They take Uber, Lyft, Waymo, the train, buses, whatever. But anyhow, if you want to expand that, so for instance, you do, one more thing before we go. If you do stuff to your property to expand it, expandability, that's what I'm talking about here. For whatever reason, okay, if you put laundry in, pay laundry. If you put in storage, pay storage. If you put in parking, pay parking. That increases the value of your property. It brings more income in because those things are related. Income for the property is related to value, okay? It's a different formula than private residential property like, single family homes, place that you live. There are things you can do, but you want to do it so that you can increase it. For what reason? One is just pure profit. I want to have more income. Another is for refinancing or taking out a loan on that property, because if you increase its value but increase its income, you increase the value of that property. And guess what? You've created equity out of nothing. You put in some washers and dryers that are pay, and that increases the value of the property. Guess what? Now you can pull that money out. You pull that money out for a vacation. You can pull that money out to reinvest and get another property. So you can snowball this whole thing. Some things you have to do because of the nature of the property and the nature of the market in that area, you might really have to struggle to make something happen. If you're building something new, you can make it to your liking as far as what you want built in there. You can, from day one, you can have individual units that have pay, washer, dryer. You give them some examples of, okay, for units that have garages, you get what I'm saying? If someone has a garage versus parking outside every night, they'll pay more for that unit. So anyhow, expandability, be creative. You can, like I said, this was all an example with residential real estate, rental properties, but these kind of things you can leverage and use into other businesses as well. Okay? I don't know, if you're a service industry like a plumbing company, if someone wants to keep you on a retainer so that, if their toilet overflows at 2 o'clock in the morning, you'll be there in a half hour, that's another thing. Maybe not you, but maybe someone in your company will be on call. Things like that. Little stuff you can do, and it'll increase the bottom line, improve the bottom line. You get more service, you make more money. I think my tongue went to sleep. Expandability, think about it. Think about it in your situation. Either you're, a first time or someone who's just thinking about doing real estate investing or starting another company, or we want to expand it, make it bigger. A restaurant, instead of having one restaurant, you want to start working on a chain. There's so many ways to expand what you do. Keep an open mind, look around, see what other people are doing, other companies are doing, and you may leverage that idea for you. But anyhow, there are so many ways besides just raising the rent to make more money, and there's more ways than, putting more units on an apartment house to make it also make more money. Washer, dryer, parking, storage, a lot of little things go a long way. Anyhow, Donald Henderson here. I'm out. Have a great day. Bye-bye.